Coming up on Colonial Crossfire, the longest government shutdown ends. The 2020 elections are gearing up with a crowded Democratic field. And Venezuela enters into crisis mode. Joining us on the left, Louis Kahn. And on the right, Christian Lane. And I'm your moderator, Michael Schnell. From the GWTV studios in Washington, D.C., this is Colonial Crossfire. Welcome to 2019's first episode of Colonial Crossfire. I'm your moderator, Michael Schnell. What a crazy couple of weeks it has been here in Washington. On December 22nd, the U.S. entered what would become the longest government shutdown in history. Why? Congressional Democrats, Republicans, and President Trump himself could not agree on border security funding. Really, the main issue here was funding for the president's proposed wall on the U.S.-Mexico border, which would cost $5.7 billion. Of course, Democrats and Republicans disagreed. Those on the left, led by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, refused to include funding for the wall in the budget. At the same time, President Trump led the right in advocating for the barrier. It was a battle between two partisan political elites, and neither would give in. Until, on January 25th, speaking from the Rose Garden, President Trump temporarily reopened the federal government without funding for the wall. He explained that it would remain open for 3 weeks, during which congressional Democrats and Republicans would discuss a compromise for border security. So now the question is, what happens next? Are we on the brink of another government shutdown? Well, our student panel is here to discuss this and more. On the left, Louis Kahn, a freshman from Burbank, California, majoring in political science and minoring in public policy. Louis is currently interning on Capitol Hill and is a member of the GW College Democrats. And on the right, Christian Lane, a sophomore from Marlton, New Jersey, majoring in systems engineering. Christian is a committee member at GW's Young America's Foundation. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.
After a historic 35-day shutdown, the government is finally open, at least for now. President Trump and congressional Democrats struggled for over a month to reach a decision about border security funding. The shutdown was felt outside the D.C. bubble, too. During the hiatus, federal government employees, including park rangers and TSA agents, were furloughed, missing 2 paychecks. Now the president has agreed to open the government until February 15th, with hopes that he and congressional Democrats can reach a decision regarding the border wall and the budget. Christian, we'll start with you. Do you think within the next 3 weeks the president and the Democrats can reach a deal, or are we bound for another shutdown?
You know, Michael, I honestly don't know. I was proud of the president for shutting the government down for this cause for which most of us elected him for. And I see the committee together is doing, seems to have some headway and some promise for negotiating, but then you have Nancy Pelosi being like, no wall money, no wall money, no wall money. So what is she? She's being the parent over the rank and file Democrats. I would hope for a negotiation. However, if I don't, I advise the president against declaring a national emergency, because I just feel like we criticized Obama for doing the same thing a couple of years ago, but I wouldn't be as opposed to it now.
Louis, what's your take?
So I would say here that the president's policy preferences are completely misconstrued in this manner. Nancy Pelosi has proposed border security, but it's border security that would actually work. It would increase technology on the border, and then it would also increase security at ports of entry where most of the illegal drugs come in. And really, the number one problem in this whole border crisis, as the president says, I don't really view it as that, is that people overstay their visas. So building a wall is not going to do anything to address that problem. So what President Trump should do is increase border security through the Democrats' proposed package. Nothing will get done by just building a wall.
So we now have 3 weeks to hash this out, but one of the main issues that was concerning the first shutdown was these furloughed federal workers. They missed 2 paychecks, some weren't able to put food on the table, and it was a real issue. Do you think that these furloughed workers will play a role in determining if President Trump will enter a shutdown in the next 3 weeks?
Well, I think that the furloughed workers were the reason why he was forced to reopen the government last Friday. Because of the flight delays at LaGuardia, it became because of TSA agents not showing up to work because they were not getting paid for such a long period of time. So I think that with that in mind, the president is going to probably have to reopen the government, and he will have to cave. He could only hold out for so long.
Christian, what's your take?
You know, I I do agree that that's the reason that he reopened the government. I think those federal workers are doing a great job for us. They're really stuck in. I mean, what I believe is for a good cause. However, like, I know Republicans tried passing legislation to pay them during the shutdown, and Democrats said no. So that's where I get confused, because why wouldn't you want them to be paid if we're having a shutdown and you know they're about to not get their second paycheck? I mean, I understand the whole idea where it's like, okay, let's make him pay for it by continuing the shutdown, by having the federal workers not be paid. But why are you then taking advantage of the workers when we have offered legislation to pay them?
Well, I would just say on that the House Democrats voted on a bill for back pay for federal workers, and the only 7 congressional members who voted against that bill were Republicans. So I don't know like what you're talking about with that.
With what?
In respect to that bill, because Democrats voted for back pay for federal workers.
Well, I think we all voted for back pay, like to sign eventually. I mean, I saw in the news that that Republicans, were asking for legislation to pay the workers amid the shutdown, and Democrats voted against it. That's what I saw from Steve Scalise on TV, so I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on, during an Oval Office meeting with House Speaker Pelosi, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, and Vice President Pence, President Trump vowed to take credit for the looming shutdown. Here's the president at the meeting.
I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Chuck, because the people of this country don't want criminals and people that have lots of problems and drugs pouring into our country. So I will take the mantle. I will be the one to shut it down.
So I know we mentioned this before, we touched on it, the possibility of a national emergency. If President Trump and Congress does not reach a deal by February 15th, do you think that the president will declare a national emergency to secure funds for the border wall, or do you think that the government will shut down again? And in your opinion, what's the better choice?
So I think that obviously the better choice is to reach a compromise with House Democrats, and I think that, again, Nancy Pelosi has put forth a solution to the problem that the president should agree with. But I do think that he will propose a national emergency, because this president is no stranger to really drastic decisions. And at this point, his base, like, he has something around a 40% approval rating, and really that's all that he has left. So he will do anything to satisfy them.
What would be the repercussions of launching a national emergency?
Well, I think that it's going to launch into this years of litigation in the courts, and it's going to start a constitutional crisis.
Do you think it'll go through when it goes to the courts?
Well, I mean, it depends, like, honestly, what court it goes through. If it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court, you know, it could be a 5-4 conservative majority, because, I mean, like, that's what we have right now. So, I mean, I can't really speculate as to how they'd vote, but I'd assume they'd vote in accordance with the president.
Christian, I know you touched on this before, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I know he's saying that Nancy Pelosi is putting a good package together, but none of it includes a wall. I mean, in good faith, why wouldn't you at least offer some money for the wall? Trump's saying the $5.7 billion for the wall, and he's not denying the technology and the drones and the improved ports of entry. But let's just say, okay, let's say we have a deal, and all of that gets put in place without the wall. Okay, now you have this super concentrated port of entry. Do you not think that people are not going to veer right into a desert and go left, and they already do? There are already many corridors along Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas where people flow through. Yes, most crime comes through the ports of entry. We just had the most fentanyl acquired by Border Patrol in history. I think it's 254 pounds of it, which is unbelievable, but that's all we know. That's the stuff coming in that we're catching. We don't know whether it's coming in through port of entry or through the border where there's no wall. So I'm not saying that the wall is the only option, but I'm saying if it's 90% effective, I don't see the logical reason against it. Ultimately, I think if Democrats can't come to this common sense understanding with Republicans, I think Trump should declare the national emergency, because, I mean, he campaigned on it, and if it's pretty darn black and white in the Constitution that a president can build. A president can use construction.
So I want to jump in there.
Build
You said that he should go forward with the wall because he promised it during the campaign. So that brings me to my next question. Illegal border crossing has, according to statistics, it's decreased since 2000. So do you think that his push for the wall is more to please his base and to achieve that campaign promise, or do you think that it'll actually be effective?
Well, okay, it's decreased, but it's still 300, 400,000 people coming through the border illegally, which we should not have. I think a wall, I mean, he ran on it and he won because of it. I think people understand the idea of border security. 10 years ago, everyone was agreeing on the wall. Everyone was agreeing on we should have a fence, but the discussion and the disagreement was how do we deal with illegal immigrants already here? Now it's like, okay, we're not even going to put a wall up to stop illegal immigration. We're going to put border security, but what is border security without a wall? I'm sorry, but if you have drones and technology at ports of entry, okay, you have drones flying up above you, watching them go, I don't see the purpose is. I don't see the significance
So I would
of that.
respond to this. When the president went down to the border to meet with Border Patrol agents, they showed him that his proposed prototype for the wall would not work, and in fact that you could dig tunnels underneath the wall and they would get through. So the wall itself is not effective. Some Democratic representatives, like I believe Representative Roybal Allard from California, she proposed increased more Border Patrol agents on the border, which I totally support because that's an effective way to solve the problem. But I really don't, but I think that erecting a medieval wall will not do anything to solve the problem. You could get a ladder, you could hop over it, and if there's nobody there to catch you, then there's really no point for the wall to be there.
I want to ask a follow-up question. Christian mentioned that border security is not border security without a wall. Louis, you agree with that statement?
I do not.
So
I think there's many different ways to solve the issue. Increased technology is one of them. Again, 90% of drugs go through ports of entry, so I think that, like as he mentioned, that they seized a lot of fentanyl yesterday at one of the ports of entry, and I think that we should be seeing more of that. And that could be done not through a wall, but by increased security.
Okay, so we've talked about how it's been tough to compromise lately, but President Trump did sort of put a hand forward. He said, Nancy Pelosi, I will give you 3-year temporary citizenship for dreamers if you give me the $5.7 billion for the wall. Do you think that this was a smart move? Do you think that it was a viable offer by President Trump? And do you think Nancy Pelosi should have accepted it?
So I think that at this point, the president has zero credibility because he said that he would agree to the initial package that they voted on back in December, and how Senate Republicans voted unanimously with Democrats for the proposal. But then once Rush Limbaugh started getting in his ear, he backtracked because he was afraid that he'd start losing his base. So I do not think it's a good solution.
So you agree with Nancy Pelosi not accepting the deal?
Yeah, because I honestly don't think he has any credibility left, and we cannot trust him. He's lied many times before. I think 8,000 times in his first 2 years in office. Why would it be different now?
Christian, your thoughts?
Okay, how is it lying if he offers it? I'm sorry, but he offered it, which I think he shouldn't have done. You either come up with a better immigration plan. I don't necessarily think the Dreamers offer protection. Fine if they, if that's what it takes to have a wall. I think that would have been an excellent compromise. But it baffles me that Nancy Pelosi is still sitting there saying no, 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 because she can. She can do it, but is that going to serve her well? Is that going to serve Democrats well? When they're coming in, their thing is to, when they're in charge of running the government, her thing is to obstruct whatever's happening, not come to a compromise. I'm just
Well, I think that everything, the president agreed with the initial spending package until he was against it. So with that said, he could change his mind at any moment. So that's why I think that Nancy Pelosi is fully aware of that, and that's why she's not going to let him have his way.
I'm going to cut you off there. We are running out of time, but I want to ask one more question.
Sure.
Louis, imagine you're Speaker Pelosi. Christian, imagine you are President Trump. What would you propose to the counterpart to reopen the government as a compromise? Louis, you first.
So I think that we could spend $5.7 billion, but it's on border security that is effective. That is through increased technology, increasing the presence of Border Patrol agents, and then also we need to come to a comprehensive immigration reform system to make a clear pathway for people to get here. And I think that one of the reasons why we have this illegal immigration problem is that people don't see any pathway to citizenship. So we need to create that for more people. And I think that that's the best way to do it.
Christian, what's your pitch?
I think a deal without a wall is not a deal. I'm fine conceding protection for dreamers and then going in good faith to discuss further because, like Louis mentioned earlier, it's not just people crossing the border, it's about people overstaying their visas. So I think more immigration reform is needed with such things as E-Verify to track visas and increased technology at the border. But you can't say that people are not going to continue crossing the border if you don't have a physical structure to detract them and make them go to a port of entry.
All right, we'll have to end our segment there, but after this, we'll dive into the 2020 presidential election and break down the very crowded Democratic primary field. Stay tuned.
You guys ready?
Let's do it.
Yeah?
Let's do it.
Okay, ready?
Let's go. Welcome
Welcome.
to Wait, do you want me to go or?
I thought I was going.
No,
No, you go. You go. You go.
Sean and Michael
Yeah,
want
well,
you guys.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, ready?
Welcome to G.
I thought I was supposed to
I
start.
thought I was gonna go first.
I thought.
Here comes Parker.
Come on, guys. It's not that hard, all right? It's just one line, all right? You guys know the line.
Welcome to GWTV. You can visit us at gw-tv.com.
See, that wasn't so bad.
Welcome back. It's been about 3 months since the 2018 midterm elections, the night the Democrats took control of the House and the Republicans strengthened their grip in the Senate. Yet, the 2020 presidential contest is already in full swing. Right now, there are multiple well-established Democrats officially running for office, and that field is only expected to grow. In 2016, the Republicans had the crowded debate stage. It seems as though the Dems will now take on this status quo. On the right, President Trump currently has a clear road to the Republican ticket. Nobody from the party has primaried him yet. However, many have expressed interest, explaining that they are considering it. Louis, we'll start with you. The Democratic field is very crowded right now. There are a lot of candidates, and like I said, it's only expected to grow. I think this is a positive attribute because there are multiple views within the party, so each member will be able to align with somebody running, or do you think it's negative because things like vote splitting could happen and no candidate will secure enough votes for victory?
Absolutely. So I think that's something that Democrats need to keep in mind in 2020, is that no matter who is the nominee, we need to support them because anybody who's running right now is far better than Donald Trump. Now, with that in mind, I think that having a crowded debate stage and a really substantive policy discussion incorporating people from the left like Bernie Sanders and more people towards the middle like John Hickenlooper if he decides to run, and everybody in between, I think that that serves to the benefit of the party so we properly vet our nominee. I think that if we repeat the same mistake in 2016 by not having a really contested primary battle where people were had to choose between Hillary, and although I really love her, I think that she had a lot of baggage that really hurt her in the general against Donald Trump, and Bernie Sanders, who was far to the left of the rest of the country. So I think that the more candidates that we have and the better discussion that we have in the primary process will serve us better in the general.
Christian, what are you thinking?
I mean, I say put as many as you like out. I mean, so far, all of them, you're saying Bernie was so far to the left. I think almost everyone, all these faces running are as left or even more left as Bernie Sanders. They're approving of his 70% tax rate. They want free college. They want Medicare for all. And what Kamala Harris said the other night on CNN's town hall made my ears bleed. The fact that she wants to take away private insurance, like she said, let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of private insurance. Let's take it in with, that just made my stomach churn. I just did not like that.
So just to clarify on the 70% tax rate, that's a marginal tax rate after the people make $10 million, they're not taxing 70% of the whole income. So I don't think that that's that far-fetched of a proposal. Under Dwight Eisenhower, who was by no means a communist, he had about like an 80 or 90% tax rate. So like just to clarify there.
Right, but okay, let's look at 1980 when Ronald Reagan reforms the tax code and all the economic growth that happens in the 80s and 90s. You don't think that has anything to do with lower taxes?
Oh, we had great economic growth in the 50s and 60s too. I think actually to a higher degree.
In the 80s and the 90s?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we could check on that, but.
Yeah, no, I would highly advise. I mean, if that's what Democrats want, let's put it out there and let's let the people speak. But I don't think anyone likes that number 70% on their tax.
California Senator Kamala Harris threw her hat in the ring on January 21st. Harris has received much attention since her announcement. Here's the senator the morning she launched her campaign.
I love my country. I love my country. And I feel a sense of responsibility to stand up and fight for the best of who we are. And I'm prepared to fight, and I know how to fight.
Senator Harris is, of course, the former Attorney General of California. During her tenure there, she made some contentious decisions, some a result of her strong stance on crime. Do you think that this will affect her candidacy in 2020, and if so, how? Louis, we'll go to you first.
So I think that it's good that we're having this discussion because I think that her record needs to be examined to the fullest. But I would say that we need to look at the big picture here. If she happens to be the eventual nominee, I think that she is far better than Donald Trump. And while I don't necessarily agree with all things that she did as Attorney General, as long as she promises to not pursue those same policies in the White House and appoint an Attorney General with similar views, then I think that she'd be a respectable nominee, but or respectable president in that matter. But I do think that we need to learn more about her record, and I think that she has to explain what she did, because I am a little bit skeptical.
So you do think it'll affect her in the sense that it will definitely be a topic of frequent conversation?
Oh, well, absolutely, because I mean, like I see on all the Facebook comment threads that the so-called Bernie bros keep attacking her on her record, and I think that she really does need to explain that, because in order to win, we need a coalition of the left and then the more moderate members of the party, which I think Hillary was not able to fully form. And since we only lost the White House by 80,000 votes in the Electoral College, I think that just forming that coalition is very important. So I think that if she's able to explain that, I think she's great on all other fronts.
Christian, do you think that Kamala Harris's tenure as AG will affect her in 2020?
You know, I watched the video, it went viral on social media, where she starts bragging about imprisoning the parents of truant children in California, and I'm just, that's not the solution I think we should be doing for kids who are truant. Of course, everyone should educate their children, but imprisonment for their parents, I just think that was, and not only to do that, but to brag about it with her big stick. I just thought that was wild. And what you said, Louis, she's much better than Donald Trump. I don't think Medicare for all and free college, tuition-free college, debt-free college is much better than any option we have out there. I mean, I would love to see her run, because I think it would be an easy victory for Republicans and President Trump, because I just think most of this country does not want to go that left. I just don't see that happening.
Can I respond to that?
Absolutely.
So I think that when we're talking about the truancy thing, in no way am I going to defend her, but you're talking about a sitting president who enacted the zero tolerance policy, where they literally ripped children from their parents' arms. So I think that making that case without acknowledging what this president has done is a false equivalency.
I'm sorry, but we all know that President Obama did that full well to stop human trafficking, which is an excellent cause, and he got some flack for it in 2014, but I think most people supported it, because people who are coming over with their parents, they aren't their parents, or people who are trying to traffic them into the country for sex slavery, and it's not okay. I mean, while I think families should remain together, and increase the press, I don't see anything wrong with his decision to continue Obama's implementation.
Well, I'm going to have to
I
cut you off
believe
there.
that
We could talk about Senator Harris all day, but we have to move on to another not Democratic candidate. So Julian Castro, he was the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under President Obama. Do you think that this will affect his candidacy in 2020? Christian, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I don't really see him as a big player. I mean, I'm sorry. I think Harris and Warren, outlast him. And he doesn't have popularity. He doesn't have the status among Democrats. I mean, if I were a Democrat, I would be gravitating more towards Kamala Harris. I mean, granted, her policies are way too left, but I think she has the charisma that, some of the charisma Obama had, and that I think is good for Democrats, because one thing I admire about them is they're really good about telling stories, and I think Kamala Harris can deliver that well. Julian Castro, he just looks almost plastic to me. Like, the way he delivers himself is not authentic.
Plastic.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, he's just someone who's trying to run for president. He's not going to win. I mean, if he gets up there and he gets a solid position, that's great. I don't know. I don't really see Democrats giving him too much attention.
What are you thinking?
Well, I think that in his announcement speech, he was very genuine. I think that his story is the definition of the American dream, how he came from nothing, and how his mother worked hours just to provide for her kids so that they could have these opportunities. I know that his brother, I believe, is also the representative from a district in Texas too. So both of them are very successful. I don't know much about his policies and his time at the Obama administration, but I would say that I think that his story does resonate with a lot of people, and his origin story is actually authentic compared to the president who lied about the amount of money that he got from his father to start his business in the first place.
So we're going to move on to another potential president in 2020, Senator Elizabeth Warren. Her run was pretty expected. A lot of people saw her. She's been in the political arena for quite some time, and she has proposed a wealth tax. Do you think that this wealth tax will defer wealthy Democratic donors from donating to her campaign for 2020?
I don't. So I believe that this wealth tax would only affect people at the very top, and it would generate a lot of revenue. So I think that these wealthy Democratic donors, they want to see a better society for everybody. So this tax that she proposed would generate, I believe, around $2 trillion over the course of 10 years. and that would be able to fund the expansion of many social programs, which Democrats are advocating for. So I think that donors who are already in the Democratic Party, they acknowledge that they need to pay their fair share of taxes for the betterment of everybody. So I do think they'd be in support of that.
Do you think that the wealth tax will affect her donors?
I'm not really keen on whether wealth tax will, whether their donations from people will go to her campaign. I don't really think that's as big of an issue. I think the bigger issue to be talking about is those wealth tax, is the tax itself. I mean, he says, so we can pay for better social programs. I'm sorry, the Medicare for All plan that she's very behind is cost $32.6 trillion over 10 years. That's $3.3 trillion every year. And I'm sorry, even if I'm pretty sure there was a study thrown, you can check it out, but I think even if we tax the top 1% and 95% tax rate, we go bankrupt in months. So I'm sorry, these social programs are too hard to afford, and I don't think that we should be taxing people who are responsible for hiring and employing so many people, because once you tax them, they pull back on their money. They lay more people off, and then more people are unemployed.
But do you think it will affect her donors? Do you think that she'll generate less campaign funds?
I don't think so. I think she's probably top 5 among Democrat candidates, I would say. I think people are going to pour in no matter what.
Louis, you wanted to respond.
Yeah, so I think that I'm on the topic of the sheer cost of Medicare for All, and I think that needs to be fully litigated in congressional hearings. But the argument of fiscal responsibility from the Republicans' perspective, I think, is irrelevant, because they just passed a huge tax cut, which exploded the deficit to give nearly $2 trillion to billionaires and corporations, which has done nothing to raise wages of working people that they promised. So I don't think that the argument of fiscal responsibility is really relevant when Donald Trump has not practiced that at all, and in fact the deficit has exploded under his presidency.
Well, I think as Republicans, we should maintain more of a fiscal responsibility. I think President Trump's economy has been doing pretty darn well, if you ask me. I think just today we had 304,000 additional jobs today, and we had more people enter the labor market. And wages are increasing, not as huge as we'd like to see, but they are increasing. You can't be telling me they're staying the same. There's an increase.
But when people still have to work 2 or 3 jobs to get by, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're in a good condition economically. They're still barely getting by because the wage is very low.
But
so even though that they are working.
I want to jump in, Christian. The Dow had a really rough time a couple weeks ago, and I'm pretty sure that all the economic progress that was made in the year before was diminished. Can you still tout President Trump's ability to make the economy stronger if all of his progress went away in a matter of a couple weeks?
Yeah, I mean, the numbers this morning show the Dow's been its highest ever in the month of January. I think we're on a right track. I think at the end of the year you had investors getting a little nervous. They just stopped, but then you saw it, like after that big dip, you saw it go right back up. So the next day it had its biggest one-day increase in history, so I don't see a problem with that. I see it's increasing. We have more manufacturing jobs than ever. I think he's doing an excellent job on trade with getting better trade deals for this country, making sure American workers come first, and I think it's only forward from here with President Trump.
All right, and now we're going to move from the left to the right. We have one more question. Who, if anybody, will primary President Trump, and do you think that anybody should primary President Trump? Christian, we'll go to you. This is your side of the aisle. What are you thinking?
You know, I think the GOP has already unanimously put support behind Donald Trump. I think it would be foolish for anyone else to do so. Ben Shapiro was talking about this recently, and actually when he was at here at GW, he mentioned, okay, let's say someone like a Nikki Haley runs, whom I'm a big fan of. I think she's excellent. I think she'd be a great candidate for 2024. And she already said she's not running in 2020, but if she were to run, what would happen is she would not get the support from Trump supporters. She would get the support from people who don't like Trump, and Trump would end up winning about 80% of the vote. And then after that, the media and the left will be so quick to label everyone who didn't vote for Trump as true Republicans, and everyone who voted for Trump as the bad part of the right, the racist part of the right, the homophobic, the sexist, all the isms and the ists. That's what they would do, and I think it's smart as a party to be unified, because President Trump's success is one to run behind.
If you could choose one name, who would it be?
I think anyone were primary. I think Kasich, because Flake just said he would not be running, and he's doing a deal with CBS. So I think Kasich would be the only one who would have a shot, but I think people roll their eyes at Kasich.
Okay, Louis, what are you thinking?
So I think that's something that you should keep in mind just for his sake of being reelected, or just Republicans holding on to the White House, is that 56% of Americans said that they would not vote for the president for reelection under any circumstances. So with that in mind, I think that he does need a challenger, either that be John Kasich or Larry Hogan, who I think are much more sensible, although I don't fully agree with them. I think that they would be very electable candidates that you run. But I think that the president has dug himself into a huge hole after the shutdown, and his support base is narrowing. So I think that you should look into other options.
You know, speaking of other options, I would not be opposed to a switch in vice president. I think Pence has done a solid job with his tenure in Congress, but I would not be surprised if his support among suburban women continues to be where it's at. I would not be surprised if he asked Nikki Haley to be his running mate. I think she would be an excellent vice president. I loved her tenure at the UN. She did an excellent job, and I'm a big fan. I think it would definitely bring in more women if she were to run, not just because she's a woman, because she brings a lot of sense of Donald Trump. When you see the two of them talk together, they're like a dynamic duo I haven't seen before.
I'll give you a quick chance to respond about the VP role, and then we're going to move on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Mike Pence. I think that from an electability standpoint, I think Nikki Haley would be better because of what you said. Yet again, if this guy's at the top of the ticket, I will not consider voting for the Republicans at all. So, not going to convince me.
That will be the last word on that. But after this break, it's rapid fire. Stay with us.
All right.
Universities like George Washington play a critical role in hosting debate and discourse on events of the day.
The right answer is not to refuse the other. The right answer is not to say, get rid of this religion. It's not part of us. It's wrong.
I think that the story of America is a story of race. So when I think of the questions that I'm asking or the stories that I'm going to write, I'm thinking, okay, well, what are we learning about our country?
Well, I think the likelihood of him being indicted is close to 100%. There was a lot of hurdles that had to be cleared in order for that to happen.
One of the reasons that Donald Trump is president is because there is such a frustration with the way that Washington functions.
Sympathy is one thing, but empathy is the language of recovery, and it's something that's without a doubt instilled into every person that's in recovery.
It's never lead with the positive, it's always lead with the perceived negative.
Well, that is part of the problem. I mean, I actually would agree with you on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. One of the things that we have seen that is most under siege in this country is the notion of civil discourse, and we here at GW, among other things, very much want to stand for that.
This is truly an only at GW moment.
Our panel joins us again now for Rapid Fire, some quick answers to some quick questions. On Monday, January 28th, Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker was briefed by Special Counsel Robert Mueller about the state of the Russia probe. Mueller told the AG that the investigation is reaching its end. With the inquiry wrapping up soon, what does the recent indictment of President Trump's longtime associate say about its looming results, and what about other possible indictments? Christian, we'll ask you first.
Well, I think the recent indictment of Roger Stone, I think it just shows that there's really nothing, there's really no fruit from this investigation, because he's being brought in for lying to Congress about something not even related to Russia. I just think, I don't know. I mean, I feel like it's just going to come to an end. No matter what happens, though, Republicans are going to say, okay, that means nothing. Republicans are like, oh my God, impeach him. It's going to be a null result. I don't see anything huge changing anything.
Louis?
So I think that the American people deserve to know what's in the report and what role Russia had in the 2016 election, and if they did collude with the Trump campaign. I think that the Roger Stone thing is very worrisome because it shows that their ties with WikiLeaks were very close, and Assange does have very close ties with the Kremlin, so I would like to see how that plays out. But any speculation about firing Robert Mueller or not releasing the report to make it public, I think that that does a disservice to the American people.
All right. Amidst the brewing economic crisis in Venezuela, citizens are turning against President Nicolas Maduro, during which National Assembly President Juan Guaido declared himself president of the country. President Trump, among other global leaders, weighed in and sided with Guaido. Louis, will ask you first. Do you support President Trump's decision, A, to involve himself in the crisis and take a side, and B, do you agree with the side he took?
So I think that Maduro has been a terrible leader for the Venezuelan people. So I do support Guaido and his movement. President Trump recognized his opposition government in coordination with Canada and several other countries. Now I disagree with how the administration is going about it, like on John Bolton's notepad, which he just had for the whole public to see, where he said 5,000 troops to Colombia. I do not trust one of the main architects of the Iraq War, which was a total disaster involving himself in Venezuelan affairs. I think that the best way to solve this is through diplomacy and aiding Guaido's government, but sending our own troops down there would be a mistake, and we're repeating the same thing that happened in Iraq. That's why I think that John Bolton's unqualified to be in the position he's in too.
Christian, what are your thoughts?
I agree that we shouldn't be sending troops unless it's absolutely necessary and Maduro turns against its people physically. I think that's when we intervene, but we don't stay there as long as Iraq, because Iraq was a mess. However, I do agree, and I do approve of President Trump intervening and putting economic sanctions on the exports of oil from Venezuela, because this is such a rich country, and it was just ruined by such horrible policies and such horrible leadership. And the people of Venezuela want freedom. They want Guaido. They want to have choice again in the government, and they want their inflation rate probably to be down a little less than 5,000%.
The past several weeks have been especially contentious and partisan in the U.S. The State of the Union address was scheduled for January 29th, but because of the shutdown and the infighting between the President and Speaker Pelosi, it was postponed. Now, President Trump will address the nation on February 5th. Louis, considering the current political climate, what are your expectations for the State of the Union, as well as the Democratic rebuttal, which is being given by Stacey Abrams?
So for the last 2 years, I think that the president has been very divisive in his messaging, but he has to keep in mind that the goal is to bring everybody together and under an effective compromise for border security, and I think that he should use that speech as a platform to do so and to stray away from his divisive rhetoric. Now, in regards to Stacey Abrams, I think that she's a rising star in the Democratic Party. I think that she was robbed in the gubernatorial election in Georgia, and I think that the American people are going to like what they hear.
Christian?
I think President Trump, his past State of the Union and his address to Congress after he was elected, I think have not had a divisive tone whatsoever. Recently, he has not been divisive. I think he's just been standing up for having proper border security. I think he's going to do an excellent job laying out his case, and I feel like he's advertised it as a big theme of it being unity, so I think let's give him the benefit of the doubt and let's listen to him and see what he has to say. Regarding Stacey Abrams, I agree she's very charismatic, has a great personality, but I don't think she's the best person to respond to stuff on immigration on a national level. She just lost a gubernatorial race and not working not in the Senate or not someone established who knows what they're talking about at the border. I just think that's an odd decision by Democrats.
All right, and now a competition that is almost as fierce as the Trump-Pelosi battle we've been seeing lately, the Super Bowl. Disclaimer, this episode will go public after Super Bowl Sunday, but as per tradition, we at Colonial Crossfire must ask the burning question, who's going to win? Tom Brady going to get another ring? He's going to get another title with the Patriots, or will the Rams take it? Louis, take it first.
So as a New York Jets fan, I hate Tom Brady, but I think he's going to pull it out. Pats 28-24.
28. You're even giving a score.
I probably could be wrong, but that's what Tony Romo said, so I got to go with Tony Romo.
Fair.
Yeah.
Christian.
I think the Patriots are going to win too. I mean, us Eagles, we beat them last year. I don't think the Rams. Todd Gurley could pull it off. He's been very quiet in the playoffs. So I think overall, I like the 28 number for the Pats. I think it's more like 19 for the Rams. I think it's going to be 28-19 Pats.
All right, well, that's going to end our debate portion here on Colonial Crossfire. Louis Kahn, Christian Lane, thank you guys for joining us today. When we come back, Willow Hassan has our debate fact check. Stay with us.
So who do you think you're going to take in the first round this year?
I don't know. I think I'm going to take Peyton Manning.
He's still playing?
I saw him in a commercial recently. I'm pretty sure he is.
Oh yeah, it's the Nationwide commercial.
Yeah.
Guys, in the new studio, come on. We don't have a football team.
I guess no one told him fall was football season. Yeah.
Welcome back. During our panel discussion, a team of fact checkers monitored our debate. Willow Hassan is here to fill us in on what we missed. Willow.
Thanks, Michael. At one point during the debate, Louis said that 7 Republicans voted against the bill for back pay of federal workers. Christian then disagreed, saying that he saw it was a group of Democrats who voted against the bill. Here, the debaters were actually talking about 2 different bills. Louis talked about a December bill where Republicans voted against paying back federal workers after they missed their first paycheck. Christian was addressing a January bill that House Republicans brought up to keep federal workers paid but keep the government shut down. While Christian said that Trump does not deny the technology in drones at border security, to clarify, Trump is denying the extent and expansion of drones and technology and believes that a physical border wall will actually improve illegal border crossing. Christian stated that 3 years ago, everyone agreed on the border wall. In reality, Democrats in 2006 voted for a bill that increased fencing along the border that would work hand in hand with technology and drones at the border, not a 30-foot concrete wall without an increase in technology as Trump originally proposed. Christian said that there was economic growth in the 1980s under Ronald Reagan. This claim cannot be proven completely, as some argue that the state of the economy reflects the former president, while others claim the growth had closer ties to domestic and international issues unrelated to Reagan's tax plans. Louis then talked about economic growth in the 50s and 60s. Economic growth in the 50s and 60s was recorded, but it is debatable whether this growth was due to the high tax plans or other factors like the post-war boom. Finally, Christian said that the inflation rates in Venezuela are 5,000%. In reality, at the end of 2018, Venezuela's annual inflation rate was recorded at 80,000%. That's all from the Fact Check team. Back to you, Michael.
Thanks, Willow. All right, well, that brings us to the end of this episode of Colonial Crossfire. Be sure to check us out online at www.gw-tv.com and follow us on Twitter and Instagram and like us on Facebook. For all of us here at GWTV, I'm Michael Schnell. Thanks for getting caught in the crossfire with us. We'll see you right back here next time.